Remastering video games has become an increasingly prevalent practice since the 7th console generation began. As technology inexorably marches forward, older games that fall by the wayside can be reinvigorated. Give them a coating of glossy high-definition paint, release them at a lower price point, and titles from years past can easily find new life, and a new audience. Completely remaking a game, on the other hand, isn't quite so common, especially in the shooter realm, where the concept of rebuilding a game from the ground up is almost non-existent, with development studios instead opting to simply port over their catalogue to modern systems. Furthermore, remakes require a significant investment of both time and resources, in addition to posing a bigger risk to the developer. When a classic is remade, it will be faced with inherently harsher judgment from players who will inevitably compare it to the original entity, a problem that the game I'll discuss in this video doesn't really have to concern itself with. Alltynex is a doujin game originally released in 1997 for the FM Towns line of Japanese home computers. An odd choice of platform, as it was far from the most popular brand of PC, as well as being on its last leg, with 1997 being the same year that manufacturer Fujitsu would cease production of the machines. So in being such an obscurity, developer Satoshi Yoshida was able to remake his older work without it having to stand up to the kind of rabid scrutiny that more widely known games do when they undergo the same treatment. Alongside his friends, who comprise the staff of Theta Skein, probably most well known for 1999's Kamui, Alltynex 2nd is the result of their endeavours. Initially released in 2010 at Comiket, New Media, a publisher focused on localising independent Japanese games, primarily shooters and visual novels, would release the game internationally in late 2014. In regards to the game footage you'll see in this video, I do apologise about the whopping great watermark. For some reason the replay function of the game feels the need to constantly remind you about what you're watching. I'll begin with the star of the show, which is undoubtedly the weapon system that your ship, the tactical melee craft armed saboteur, comes equipped with. By default, you can make use of two different shots. A standard spread of hot plasma that increases in strength and screen coverage as it powers up, and homing lasers, which while having an obvious benefit in their circumventing any need for accuracy, the usage of which will drain your main cannon's power level, which must be recovered by destroying enemy craft. Just from looking at how these two weapons differ and also affect one another, we get our first glimpse at the fundamental skills required in Alltynex: restraint and patience. You have to balance your main weapon's strength with the desire to unleash greater destruction, as the short-term gain will only lead to issues later on when you encounter a strong foe and don't have the firepower to deal with it. However, your vessel is capable of so much more. As its name suggests, this fighter has CQB capabilities through its ability to transform into an airborne mech suit. While obviously not the first shooter to grant you transformative abilities, and I'm certain it won't be the last to make use of this most enduring trope that Macross blessed us with, shifting from spacecraft to mecha has a significant effect on gameplay. You can transform at any time you wish, and doing so will change your equipage drastically. Your standard shot is replaced with a close-range energy blade, and the homing missile becomes a laser beam. Not only can these weapons obliterate all that should come into contact with them, but they also make for great defensive tools, by effortlessly disintegrating enemy bullets before they can reach you. Naturally, they do come with drawbacks. The energy blade forces you to engage the enemy at close proximity, putting you at greater risk of taking a hit, and the laser drains your main gun's power like the homing laser, as well as rooting you in place while in use. Success in Alltynex will come down to your learning the strengths and weaknesses of each weapon and which situations they are best used in, with the brilliance of the system really shining in the boss fights. Most shooters will have the end-level boss serve as the test of your reflexes and ability to decipher the patterns of opposing bullets so that you can evade them, all while laying down a constant barrage of your own. Here though, you'll quickly notice how remarkably ineffective your regular weapon is at piercing the armour of enemy boss ships, meaning that you'll need to make use of your mech's weaponry instead. The laser will only get you so far, as it won't be long before its energy is completely drained, leaving you with no option but to commit to melee combat. This isn't quite as suicidal a proposition as it sounds, as the bosses will all leave themselves vulnerable at some point, with the player's job being to identify when this is and capitalise upon this opportunity by going in swinging. So unlike your standard shooter, which demands you play both offensively and defensively simultaneously, Alltynex forces you to be cognizant of when it's best to focus on survival, and when to launch a counter-assault, giving battle a greater sense of strategy. Remember that your sword can cancel out opposition bullets, so sometimes the most prudent move is to refrain from causing any sort of damage at all, biding your time until the opportune moment for you to retaliate during a momentary respite from the incoming onslaught. Not only does your loadout dictate the ebb and flow of combat, it's also crucial in maximising your score, and gaining extra lives through doing so. Destroying ships and other space detritus in rapid succession with your regular cannon or homing laser will start to build up a combo count, topping out at 16. This number represents a score multiplier, but only for when you switch to using the energy weaponry. So the optimal technique for racking up high scores is quite simple. Dispatch of small ships to build up the combo, then quickly transform when larger, and by extension more valuable targets, rear themselves. Aggressive yet efficient actions are what is needed if you're looking to eke out as many points as possible. The window of time permitted between destroying ships in order for the combo to increase is incredibly slim, and even when a high combo has been achieved, it will drain away rapidly, meaning that a fearless commitment to getting in close with your energy sword is needed, as a more passive approach may benefit your survivability, but will go without reward. Oddly enough, the difficulty you select doesn't really ameliorate your score in any way. There's no bonus for playing on the harder settings, nor does it spawn any more enemies, so upping the challenge can actually be a detriment to achieving a high score, as you will have to be that much more focused on completing the game in a single credit, with no compensation in the end. Difficulty in Alltynex may err on the easier side for some, but I think it offers a suitable challenge for most players, regardless of skill level, especially when taking the different approach to battles that the weapon system mandates into consideration. As most of the enemy's firepower can be neutralised by your sword and laser, there isn't a great need to perform a lot of dodging, challenge instead coming from the need to engage most foes at point blank range, where picking an inopportune moment or failing to destroy your target with haste will surely lead to your demise. Once you've completed a few runs of the game though, it's not hard to figure out enemy and boss attack patterns, at which point you can devise almost foolproof strategies that can be executed with an incredibly high rate of success. Moving up to hard will cause a few deaths at first, mostly due to a sucker punch from bullets you weren't used to dealing with, but for the most part, you can use the same methods across every difficulty. While the overall package of features that comes supplied with the game is quite limited, all the standard bases are covered here. 3 difficulty options are available by default, with a nice even progression in challenge occurring between each of these ranks. Upon achieving a 1 credit clear on the hard difficulty, an extra option will be present that causes enemies to produce targeted suicide bullets after you take them out, with the amount of these bullets correlating to the type of enemy. There is also a tutorial and practice mode, allowing you to learn the basics of the game's mechanics and fine-tune your skills at specific sections that you may find particularly troublesome. Then there is of course the replay feature I touched on earlier, which offers 2 different viewing experiences. Firstly is the standard view, which is what you're seeing. This simply replays the game as it looked when actually playing through it, but you can also switch to a more dynamic view that displays the action from a variety of angles. While not of much use if you're trying to study a replay, or in my case, help visualise the explanations I'm giving, it does allow for a cinematic recreation of your world-saving endeavours. Retail price for the game is less than £6 though, so there's no reason to expect any embellishments or bonus niceties. Moving on to Alltynex's weakest aspect, which for me has to be without question its visual presentation. Unlike the original game, which was a purely 2-dimensional affair, with the interactable elements being crafted from sprites, the remake adds that extra half dimension, keeping the gameplay within the confines of a 2D plane, but with all the spacecraft structures and environments now appearing in 3D. Understandably, it's going to be a challenge for such a small developer to create impressive 3D visuals for a shooter, and while they haven't done a bad job, nothing about the graphics are remarkable in any way. Furthering this issue is the incredibly pedestrian design that's employed throughout the game. The designs on enemies and locales are all highly derivative, and Alltynex doesn't do anything in order to make its sci-fi setting unique in any way. The bosses themselves are also devoid of originality or personality of their own, all consisting of oversized mechanical creations that aren't memorable in the slightest. At the very least, most of the bosses can be dismantled during your encounter with them, and their design makes it very clear at a glance which sections can be detached from the main hull. So rather than rushing to destroy it, you can opt to focus on its various armaments, not only reducing its firepower, but obtaining some bonus points in the process. For the most part, the graphics don't interfere with the action. The only time I felt that they were obstructing my view was during the opening stage. Like so many of its peers, Alltynex starts out by attempting to put its best foot forward, and instantly impress with an epic clash of galactic proportions. While this admittedly makes for some exciting visuals, a lot of the background devastation can be a bit overbearing and obscure some of the enemy bullets that you actually need to evade, artificially increasing the challenge. Thankfully, this problem only resides within the opening stage, which is naturally going to be the easiest, so it's more of an inconvenience that will occasionally trip you up, rather than a persistent flaw. Auditory-wise, the game fares much better. In an interview with DaedalusMachine.com, a member of Cetus Gain mentioned how they've continued to use a Roland SCD-70 sound module to create their music, deliberately postponing the purchase of a more recent device because they've become so used to working with it. Their mastery of it shows, with Alltynex boasting a fantastic synth metal soundtrack that never became repetitive to hear over repeat playthroughs. The synthetic sound pairs great with the science fiction mise-en-scène, as it has those more artificial, futuristic qualities that lend themselves so well to the imagery of spacecraft dogfighting just above a planet's atmosphere. The compositions also successfully take advantage of the fact that, with the game being a typical 2D shooter, your progression through a level is going to occur at a fixed rate. This means that specific moments in each track can be perfectly timed to occur in tandem with a particular moment in the game. Notice how during this brief transition in Stage 2, the instrumentation changes, bringing in some bassier samples when the enemy base is revealed, heightening the sense of imposition that the game is trying to generate. What's demonstrated through sequences such as this is an understanding of what the genre offers that differs from other game modalities, and successfully takes advantage of these facets in order to maximise the impact of a specific moment. To conclude, Alltynex Second makes for an easy recommendation, thanks to its unique gameplay mechanics that will prevent you from hugging the screen's lower quarter, holding down the fire button, and expect any success to come your way. While the style of play being served here may not be to everyone's palate, the difficulty options ensures that anyone can master control over the transforming vessel, at whatever pace they feel comfortable with. The back and forth style duels found within boss fights are a great deal of fun to figure out, and I never tired of taking advantage of their openings to deal incredible damage with the energy sword. While the low budget does make itself known in a few areas, the excellent soundtrack does an admirable job of balancing out these flaws. At such a low price point, there's little reason not to give the game a try if you're looking for a shooter that still offers comforting familiarity through its 2D vertical presentation, while at the same time providing a different kind of experience. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Until the next episode, please wait warmly.